So let's start with the curveball. Like, what is DEPIN? And of course, give a short intro about yourself. And let's start with the curveball of what is DEPIN and why should the audience care about it. To give a short intro about myself, I'm one of the co-founders of Decharge. As we like to see the device here, which we'll kind of talk about it in the end. So I'm taking the avatar of Dr. DEPIN here. So at the end of the session here, I'm going to give a diagnosis of each of the projects, what we really feel about them. So let's start with you, Sushmit. What is DEPIN in your opinion, and why should people care about it?
Hello. So the way I think about DePIN is right, like all of our humans, right, they're kind of coordinated through devices, right? And these devices can be coordinated through incentive mechanisms. But right now, like the way all of these devices are, like maybe the producer and consumers, the way they are coordinated are very centralized in nature. So what we can do is like we can bring in some properties from Web3 ethos, which is open, neutral, borderless, decentralized, and censorship resistant in this thing, right? And this is what like the main spine of the DePIN is. It's basically a network of devices that are having one objective function, right? It could be like mapping an area, or it could be providing a decentralized communication service, or it could be anything, right? So that's how what I feel like what DePIN is.
Yeah. Hey everyone, I'm Evgeny. I think like I keep talking that DePIN is sort of like a new generation of sharing economy. Like we had this first wave of business models with aggregating global independent resources in like 10 years ago with Uber and Airbnb. So DePIN is something similar but on chain, right? With all the benefits that blockchain gives you from it. So it's about crowdsourcing, aggregating, and producing some product for people or exchanging the value between people. So this structure of the business model. And what we do at Fluence is like we build in the decentralized cloud platform. So we obviously aggregating global compute resources from professional operators of hardware and packaging them into cloud services to provide the value for customers. So like that's why we kind of consider ourselves DePIN.
To add to my fellow panelists, what they have said, like for us, we see DePIN as a true, empowerment sort of a product which can give the power back to the hands of the users. We see this platform as an evolving thing which can help form, in capital formation. It can help in getting users together, incentivizing them for their behavior, and of course, bringing a new way to deploy networks. In our case, it's network. For you, it's energy platforms, and all of these core infrastructure things can be solved in emerging markets using the concept of DePIN.
Yeah, that's amazing line of stories there. If you still didn't understand, feel free to ask them off stage. Like if you really didn't understand any of it. But the best part of DePIN is right. There's no hiding. It might be an early stage product, market opportunity, but you have to lead with the product, right? When each of us have a product and a story to tell, and that's where the communities get formed, right? You're able to see a tangible product, and that's how we kind of go from scale A to scale B. Yeah, next question is kind of like a first principle question. I'm sure each of you have like a problem statement story approach, right? What is it that horror story that each of you had before you have come to this particular solutioning in your respective projects? Yeah, we can start with Smith again.
Definitely, like necessity is the mother of all invention, like as you have mentioned, right? So for us, like what we have seen, like we started as one of the hack projects in hackathon, right? And there is where like we decided like, okay, we want to, like people are basically propagating the knowledge of Web3 in a very Web2 way, right? And then we figured out like, okay, like literally if we place the nodes where there are users, the performance actually increases, right? And the value that is being generated can be distributed to the person who is actually running the node, and this node can be run on basically a normal user resources like laptop and their own bandwidth, right? What we have seen is basically a cloud that we see, what we call in Web 2, is basically someone else's computer. It's not in cloud, right? So it means like you're using someone else's computer, but this can be a computer of your own. You can make a network that can have more capacity than a cloud in itself, and it could have more capabilities and more feature in itself. And that's what we realize with real-time communication, right? For real-time communication, the people talking cross-continent need to feel very live, right? If a person is in America and a person is in India, the communication has to be in less than 100 milliseconds. There are audio-video packets. And getting that through a centralized server is a performance issue, is a security issue, and there's an incentive misalignment. So just making this node actually solves all of these three problems.
Yeah, on our side, like I can speak from sort of cloud background. I think we've just been looking at the market and being software developers ourselves, even using hosting solutions, cloud solutions. One of the biggest problems, like besides all the like centralization and they controlling everything and they can ban you and they can deplatform you. The big problem is the price. Like you look at their pricing and then you think like, why that's so expensive? Like how is it possible? And then you start calculating the economics of the hardware and the server, and it's actually not. It should not be as expensive. If you buy a server and you have like a reasonable margin on it, they just charge you a lot on top because they created this nice convenient cloud services, right? And they invested in hiring a lot of people and stuff like that, and they charge you a lot. And then it's kind of like the problem is our dependence on compute, on CPUs, on GPUs, like with AI grows, like the dependence only grows. We consuming more and more compute power. And if I'm an ordinary developer, I want to create something like a really edge product, like some software on the edge, like with AI, with like all the fancy stuff. It requires me quite a lot of resources. So, this sort of inequality in access to these resources was one of the like painful things we wanted to address, and that's why we wanted to have some sort of open alternative with fair pricing, with like a fair access to everyone to compute resources, because we understand it's gonna be worse and worse with all this centralization that happens with big clouds. Yeah, I guess that's our story.
No, I think for us, the biggest thing has been discovering that infrastructure in city like Bangalore is still livable with where we have connectivity available around. But when you go down to the interiors of the country, you go down to the villages and towns, small towns, you will find that the connectivity is horrible. People cannot get reliable connectivity. Forget about the affordable, payable, affordable sort of stuff. So for us, the discovery has been in the last 7 years that country like India has negligible broadband penetration. If I have to give you basic stats, like China, similar population size, has more than 700 million broadband connections. You compare America market, North America market, for a population size of 300 million, they have around 120 million broadband connections. And you come back to India, we are struggling at less than 30 million broadband connections. The core reason has been that people do not understand there is an option available that they can go with other than the cellular connectivity. So what we are trying to really solve for over here is bring broadband connectivity, which is more accessible, more fast, and more reliable when it comes to the cellular connectivity. So I think it's a huge opportunity to solve for us, and we are pretty much doing that for over here. Yeah.
That actually is like fantastic. Like each of you had like a great story to say, right from increased coverage through Wi-Fi, delightful customer experience by providing decentralized compute and reduced latency. That these guys like these are like great engineering problems, right? That's your problem. Trying to solve it not just for now, it's like trying to solve it for scale, right? That's the best part about building the products that each of them they're kind of building towards. So let's take a step back in the general crypto space, right? Most of us talk about decentralization in a lot of projects, but I still can't get my mother to download the crypto wallet and make it use, right? So what are each of us doing to enhance that experience, get it closer to the customer as much as possible? Even your own family member can use it.
Yeah, so like the one way I think about this problem is like we can have this experiential learning, right? If people are able to experience certain things, they can learn, we can like generate curiosity about it. Think of it like internet. We use Ola, Uber, everything. But when we use about Ola and Uber, then it's where like the curiosity of internet starts. Okay, how does that work? How does the OSI model works and all of those parts. It would never be a technology first, right? So we have to start thinking from the consumer end, like what is that thing that is required so that that requires like a minimum cognitive effort to basically use that app on those side of things. So basically, I think the UX has to be sorted on those part of things. Like while using the app, you should not even know that you are actually using Web3 tools inside it. You basically get to use the benefit of those Web3 tools, right? Like if I dare to be suppose of Bitcoin, right? So instead of like setting up the keys and everything, it should be shown like, okay, how you can transfer Bitcoin like from India to other place within less than 15 minutes, right? So that's what I think about all of those things, right? All of the complexities and everything should be abstracted away. The things should be made simple, but it should not be simpler, right? So the way what I mean is like the world of Web3 is very complex and it has to be made very simple for masses to adopt it. And that can be done by experiential learning.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, we are not really making crypto easier for people at all, because what we do is B2B, right? It's a developer focused. Our customer is a developer, and developer is already like a level like you have to have certain knowledge. But I think, I mean, we make resources more accessible for people. We give ability for people to monetize compute. Probably like currently it's not home computers, but it's more like a professional devices. But still, we sort of give people more ability to do some new business that they couldn't do before. I think hopefully with our resources, we power the whole crypto ecosystem as an infrastructure, right? But I don't know, like my grandmother would not, easier use crypto because of Fluence. I don't think so.
Fair point. I think for us, the whole underlining thing has been that our product, we have found such a good market fit that we cater to this end consumer audience, our grandmothers and parents basically, who use our product just like any other Web2 product. We consider ourselves as a layer zero product, where we are providing this internet access to them as if they were using it from any other broadband player in the market, right? So for end consumer perspective, there is no change in the usage pattern. They are connecting to internet as if they were just connecting as seamlessly to any other provider. On the other hand, the decentralization part of the ownership of the devices is where the play is on the platform side of things, where people are coming from all over the world and buying our devices, and that is where the decentralization is happening. And that is essentially a tech audience that understands the product, the helium sort of products which are there in the market. They already understand the DEPIN narrative. They understand what is crypto, how the blockchain works. So for us, that part is very different from this part of the world where it's a purely a Web2 product for us and essentially helping us grow pretty fast in the market. So as far as the India market is concerned, anybody trying to build DEPIN sort of projects in the Indian market, my only advice would be that figure out that Web2 should not be touched. Let that audience come on board. Let them, experience your product first, and then you introduce the concepts of decentralization, blockchain over a period of time. Don't rush into that. Do not do something which people will not be able to understand, because this audience in India is still at least, if not a decade, at least 5 years away from, accepting those principles of decentralization and that ownership platforms. So that's what I would say, yeah.
So Shubs, you mentioned a great point there, like making it as simple as possible, right? Your end product is just this Wi-Fi connectivity in a very decentralized manner, right? So as we make the products easier, it also invites a lot of competition, right? When I say competition, let's say next year, Google and Meta say, we are taking over your industry, right? You are getting into decentralized Wi-Fi, compute, and infrastructure. Like, what would be your reaction? Starting with you.
We have seen that these guys have tried, but they are do not have any skin in the game for to build something like what we are building. It's as I said, it's a layer zero of physical infrastructure, which requires a lot of coordination on ground. You need to lay fiber, you need to manage a lot of stuff. You have ISP regulations in the country, and these guys are not here to do all that hard work. They are not here to sweat in the ground. They would rather partner with someone who has this infrastructure in place, with the big telcos rather than doing themselves, right? This is not their core business end of the day. So for us, we are pretty safe. We are not competing in the GPU market or, all those cloud stuff. What you guys are doing, you have competition. Luckily, we are safe.
Yeah, that's a great curveball. On to you.
Yeah. Like I guess we obviously compete, but I think why we are not like we don't much care about these big guys because I think it's about mentality, right? So the mentality of people building these big companies is very different. It's about extraction of value and like maximizing the extraction. And they have the whole businesses like are 20, 30, 40 years old, and they have huge amount of shareholders, right? Stocks. So they have to sort of generate this huge revenues to keep this going. Their huge, insane valuations. In order to get it, they have to extract as much money as possible from whatever they do. So they always focus on areas where they can maximize the revenue. And in crypto, it's kind of it's a little weird, but that's sort of actually the key to decentralization is to not to extract the maximum value, right? The value has to be sort of aggregated in the ecosystem, in token holders, in participating parties, but not really in the company. Like we don't need to have the company that organizes it all to earn money, like any money. Right now, our protocol is managed by the DAO, and right now it takes 0 fees. Like it's literally nothing. It's like providers have their economics. They propose a price. Customer gets this price. They rent the hardware. They rent the compute. That's it. We maybe will introduce some small fees just to get some funding in the DAO, but it's not necessarily. Our goal is to democratize access. And goal of these big corporations is to maximize revenue and make their shareholders happy. So it's a different models, and we just believe that our model is much more scalable than their model, versus their model gives brings them more capital short term. So I think we win long term, but they win short term. So that's something like.
Yeah, so as here mentioned, right? So that's quite apt point. So the way the Web2 company works is they have very few shareholders, and all the value that is being generated from their customers are accrued to that few shareholders, right? But with crypto economic incentives, we can actually change that, right? So the way we can change that is that people who are actually contributing the value, they get distributed into the value, right? And we know for the fact of collaboration and coordination, if 3 people coordinate on cutting a tree, the tree would be faster to cut, which means 1 + 1 = 3. So if more people are collaborated, there's more value actually generated. And that value can be again feedback to that coordination mechanism. And then it can be it'll become a self-recurring cycle that we see. So that's how I actually think about all of these things.
Awesome.
Yeah, also, sorry, one more quick point is, actually, we have this first mover advantage when we in crypto, because if you compare crypto to stocks, stocks are boring. Who wants to own this stock today, right? What can I do with this Amazon share? Nothing. I can just sit there and wait until it grows in the price, so I'm happy, right? And then with tokens, I can do staking. I can do put it in some liquidity pools. I can earn something. I can exchange it. I can play with this value, and I can just grow the value by doing some activity or helpful contribution into protocols. So it's much more fun and interesting, and it's that's why people like it. And these guys, they need to do also some mental switch. They need to issue tokens in terms of to really compete with our vision of the world.
Which shareholder will allow that?
So very right on point, right? So here what I think about shares and the tokens, right? And why tokens is actually superior than shares. For the fact that tokens are programmable in nature. Shares are not programmable in nature, right? Since tokens are already programmable in nature, you can build a lot of financial primitives around it. And already a lot of financial primitives have already been built, as you have mentioned, staking and everything and all of those parts, right? So which means in future, there will be more tokens than the share in itself.
Do you think programmable shares are coming? Somebody's building somewhere. Do you think that's possible?
Programmable shares would come, but then you need to know where those things are being programmed. Is it trustless or decentralized, right? if it is on some government ledger and all of those
Doesn't
things,
matter
then
what it's
that have like geofencing and all of those things. So that's why this makes Ethereum and everything very valuable in nature, right? Because this is something that is not in control of anyone. It's just in control of market dynamics.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's how like I think about all of those things. And the other difference between token and a share, right? So if you see a Web2 company, their payment system is basically in fiat, but the value accruement system is in shares, right? This is this is not the same with token. In token, value and the payment system is both in that single entity.
That's, yeah,
And
that's
that's
true.
like an innovation, right? It's economics 2.0. And that's how like I feel to be like the tokens are way better and like again like
No,
the
absolutely,
liquidity
I
that it
agree
has.
what you're saying over here. Like the the tokens are valuable in the whole ecosystem. It has a fundamental incentivization built in, which incentivizes the right kind of audience who is contributing, and they get incentivized for their contribution. So I think that's the future. Yeah, absolutely.
This was actually pretty fun. This was actually my favorite round of Q&A which we had. So the bottom line is this bunch of founders are not scared of big tech. So if you're working in Google, you should be afraid of these founders here. You might as well earn their tokens, right, while you use their products. So next, there's a tricky question here. So let's address the elephant in the room. Everyone knows fundraising is stressful and it's part of the game and everything, right? And DePIN requires patient capital, right? So how do you deal with investors who are coming with the mindset, okay, how can I get my ROI in like 10 months or 12 months? Let's start with you.
Sure, I can go for that. Uh, we are in the middle of a bull cycle, which the theme is meme coins, right? And getting attentions from the venture capital firms in the middle of a cycle where all it is but for meme coins, it's pretty difficult for teams like DeepIn, right? But said that, there are enough players in the market, the venture capitalists who are looking for long-term projects, long-term bets. All you have to do is patiently keep building, keep getting the traction for your project, and you will get that audience attracted towards your project, right? It requires a lot of execution. DeepIn is a lot more about operations, fine-tuning your operations, making it a efficient, product where it automatically is working in its sync. So for doing that, you need to put a lot of hard work over here. Capital will flow to you from both from venture capitalist side of things as well as from the market, because people are understanding that decentralization is the future. This is how the value can be get put back into their hands, and they are understanding this key concept over here. So I am not really personally not too worried about when it comes to raising venture capital. We have been lucky enough. We have been backed by some of the key players, Multicoin, Borderless, Y Combinator. So we have been lucky on those fronts. But said that, capital formation in DeepIn, venture side is totally there for sure. But the larger form of capital formation happens from the audience who participate in your project.
Yeah, I actually agree on all the points. Like we have long-term VCs that with us for years, and they have like a 10-year thinking. So there is no lack of such funds or people in crypto. Actually, there is a lot of people who come in crypto and think, okay, and do like a smart investments for long periods of time. Then during bull markets, we obviously see like millions of people jumping into and trying to get some quick returns, and sure, like go ahead and do it. Like we have the token, like it's publicly traded. Like if you like it, if you want to speculate, sure, like we cannot prevent it, right? But we, basically like we're just trying to be very focused on the product, on the value that the product gives to customers, and growing the revenue over the protocol. And we understand that our token economics designed in the right way, because it's actually like it requires certain staking of the token to add more capacity in the network. And basically, if you have more revenue, more customers, it requires more capacity. To get more capacity, there should be more staking, like more tokens staked. In order to get more tokens staked, they need to be bought from the market. So now it's like a flywheel. As we grow, as the product and consumption of compute grows, the token demand also grows, which also kind of makes token holders happier. And we understand that basically if we're successful in growing the revenue, then everyone is happy. Customers happy, providers happy, token holders happy. So, and this is what we are focusing on. And this is regardless of bull or bear market. Like this is just, we just focus on this, and then whatever market is it outside, we are fine, we are doing well. So, yeah, that's the answer.
That's amazing.
Definitely. So these are like super good reviews that we have about capital formation. Coming from an experience from Huddle and like we are like got capital from investors also, and recently we started getting capital from community also. So we started with this mechanism called node sales, and it's pretty going good for us for quite far right now. But there's like one way to think about it, right? There are certain like when you're getting this capital, on what terms are you getting this capital, right? Getting investor capital, the way I think, is basically a future promise, right? So it like basically gives you time to build and all of those part of things. The other capital is like when you make an impact, right? Once you make an impact, which means like your minutes are getting consumed and all of those things, that gets translated into this value that is getting formed, right? So what I feel is that the purest form of capital for your startup is through impact. Like if you are able to create this impact, you can basically command and control this capital, and no one would be basically liable to question, oh, how do you want to spend this capital and all of those parts. In other form of capital, what I see is like they are kind of liabilities that we are actually seeing. So you get the capital on the future promise, which is through investors, and you use that capital to make an impact capital, right? And then kind of make it sustainable from that impact capital, and then you're like kind of reliving your future promises through that impact capital in itself. So that's how we actually thought about in Huddle, right? We raised from investors, and then we went from the route of node sales, and now we are like having this revenue from the nodes. So our nodes are getting sold in itself. Previously, the nodes were free, right? You can basically run the nodes, but to run the nodes in the network, you have to stake certain tokens. And those tokens, like in Solana or in Ethereum, they're like literally 70 lakhs or 100K USD dollars. So this becomes a very cheap proposition for community because nodes are ever producing tokens, right? Because like if you're running the node, you'll get the token rewards in itself. And as we have discussed, the tokens are more valuable, and it also represents this fractional ownership into the network in itself. So that's how I actually feel about the capital, right? Don't think in a term of self-optimization, like how do I raise the capital? Think in terms of economics, like how does my ecosystem economics and their variables are actually growing? Okay, are people more spending? Are people more buying and all of those parts? So optimizing for various factors actually gives you a very healthy ecosystem. But if we optimize for profit, right, we would be in profit, but it would create negative externalities, which is something like we should be very careful of. And this is like our experience, but yeah, like in my experience getting to investors, I get rejected left, right, and center. But like out of 100 rejections, I get like 1 or 2 yes, and that's enough to run the company for next 2 years.
That, that's amazing, right? So, what's if you're a young founder listening here, the key to achieving success is product market fit, and crypto gives you that additional edge of community coming, having their skin in the game, right? So that gives you extra ammunition to kind of raise capital. And of course, when you're raising for venture, if you're not ambitious enough, why we obviously tend to get a lot of rejections. But the two yes, the high conviction yes is what matter at the end. And we also have a community having the additional skin in the game. So we are almost like close to the end of session. So like in 30 seconds, I want you guys to have a short reply. Let's say in 2030, if you want to paint a picture of how great the world is because of what you guys are solving, what would it be? Like quick 30 seconds to wrap up the session. Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, like if you see, Alexander actually invented telephone. And on that telephone, we have Ola, Uber, everything. So which means actual layer one is communication. And that's what we are building. And what we see in future, all of this activity starts to happen in DRTC network.
Awesome.
Yeah, for us, I think, as I said before, we are using compute more and more in everyday life, like every moment when you're using the phone, like everything around. So our dependence on compute is huge, and it's growing like dramatically. So we are democratizing access to compute. We're making it available. We are making people like more powerful. That's, by 2030, I hope, will be much more affordable than it's today.
Awesome.
For us, we are a layer below these guys. What they are doing with the video stuff and the compute, we are a layer below which connects these products essentially to each other, the physical layer altogether. If I have to talk about the 2030 vision, I see a world where there'll be a larger adoption of DePIN as a concept in terms of both the projects coming in, the real value, the people that get out of these projects will be back in the hands of the audience. The communities, they would be the one who would be owning these projects through a DAO mechanisms and stuff like that. And essentially, the value that is generated out of these projects, right, will not be with 2 or 3 large companies. They will be distributed. The people will be getting back the returns out of the projects that are deployed at scale. So for 2030, as far as the India market is concerned, I won't be surprised if we have at least 10 solid projects that are scaled to a self-sustainable model where there is no external capital requirement, there is no more further, dependencies on other stuff, and they are self-sustainable projects running on their own. So